Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm Phil Bakke. I'm joined in person today by Christian Canales right here in El Paso. Christian, what's up?
This is unreal, man. I feel like I woke up in the Twilight Zone that this is happening. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, this is cool. And I do want to first shout out before we do anything, Austin Young, who obviously part of the podcast and gave us his studio space today, is kind enough to be running the ones and twos back there. So yeah, just really thankful to Austin for the space. And it is a little surreal to be back in person recording. I think the date that we last recorded in person.
Yeah, the number of the day is 1,495, and that is not how many minutes it's been since Locomotive have won a game. It's less than that. It's only been like 630, believe it or not, of match minutes. But no, 1,495 days since we did this last film, March 11th of 2020.
That is crazy. And yeah, it sticks in Christian's mind because it was the day that the NBA shut down for COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the day the world shut down, or started shutting down, it's just crazy. I just vividly remember the two of us in your apartment, in your office room.
Yep.
And because that's what life was.
Yeah.
On Tuesday nights.
Yeah. Every Tuesday.
And now so much has changed. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Not just like socially or like, in the world, but like in our lives too. It's just crazy how much time 4 years is.
Yeah. No, it's insane. And it's been kind of surreal. Before I jump into everything about yesterday, because we'll obviously talk about all of the stuff surrounding that.
Have to.
Yeah, unfortunately. I was hoping to there was a brief window of time where I thought I might actually get the chance to, we might get a chance to record an episode about a win in person, but not to be, unfortunately. But before we get into all of that, if you guys are finding us for the first time, this is a little bit of a different episode since we are in person, but you can find us on all the major podcast platforms. And if you would, when you find us there, subscribe, review, whatever the platform allows. We really appreciate it. And, there is no better time to get in on a Locomotive podcast than right now on the ground floor.
It
buy
can
low.
Only go up.
Buy low. No one could accuse you of being a bandwagoner if you join right now.
Yeah, you're basically at the beginning of the. It's like when I showed up.
Yeah,
we had nowhere to go but up.
It's like we're starting over. And if you don't already, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Seriously Loco. And I guess without further ado, Christian, diving into Oakland Roots 3, El Paso Locomotive 2. I guess first things first, I did get the chance to come back to a game and experience it from the press box, but the overall match day, how'd you find it, and just the experience, I guess, of yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. We showing up in the stadium, getting to hang out with you. The first time that we have ever watched a match together, because you were usually either in 105 or in the press box, and I was in neither of those places that first season when you were here. So it was awesome. Had a fun time. Like you said, obviously the result could have gone better, but I enjoyed every minute of it. The result notwithstanding.
Yeah. It was a perfect night in terms of weather, all that stuff. The press box windows open, but it wasn't an issue because it was so nice out. But no, as far as just the being back in the stadium and everything it did, again, it was almost like a little bit of a surreal feeling just because it's been such a long time. A lot of new faces too. It was really interesting where I kind of expected I'm just going to know everybody, and it's just not it has been a long time. So it was nice to meet some new folks and then catch up with some old faces as well. It was nice Obviously seeing Joe Rodriguez in the press box as well, just kind of the old standbys up there for a Locomotive match, and then into the press conference, which I guess it's worth almost maybe in terms of dissecting this game and talking about the overall implications of it. I almost want to start from the end and kind of work backwards from there, because, and maybe it's because we're in a film studio that I want to Tarantino this thing, but I almost want to talk about the feeling in the squad post match and just like some of the comments in the press conference, and then kind of break down the actual match. So obviously being in the presser, the overall vibe around the team, I mean, it's understandable that they'd be down given the fact that they have a draw through 6 games and no wins. And the level of sort of how down they was almost, it was a little awkward or almost jarring in the room.
Yeah, it was rough. You know, we've been through rough patches before. You know, even last year, you know, after the team came crashing after that enormous run that they'd had, this was still different, and I think it's just because they have nothing to cling on to so far this season. You know, last year, you know, they had our low point where we were losing, you know, 4-0, 5-0 back to back. But they knew, you know, this group of players is what this group of players is capable of, because we'd seen it earlier in the season.
Sure.
And they just don't have that yet this year. You know, you can't blame them. It's this group of players, and so far, nothing has gone their way. You know, from a macro level, there's been moments and everything, obviously, and that almost makes it worse. Is that those moments are there, but they have just not been able to turn those moments into anything that really means something in the end. So that you could tell they're frustrated, they're dejected.
Yeah. I mean, we had the chance, you know, and anyone who watched the press conference on Locomotive social channels, it was, you know, between Justin and then Brian and then Yuma. The feeling was pretty consistent, definitely across Justin and Brian, in terms of feeling like there's a lot of effort, and just, it's like you said, they're not getting the bounces, or it's just not going their way. With Brian's in particular, though, it did feel a little bit more like almost like an exasperation versus like just frustration. He's clearly frustrated, but he seemed like shorter on answers in terms of like what exactly was going on, except that they needed to perform better and needed to win. But it did start to feel like a little bit more desperate, I guess, like in his post-match comments.
Yeah, when this happens, it's hard to pinpoint blame, you know.
Yeah.
Because I think there's enough to go around, but in the end, I think it's like Justin said in the interview, like, it's a business based on results. So someone has to be held accountable for that. And it's just hard, you know, trying to be fair to everyone involved. You know, maybe the tactics aren't right. Maybe, you know, the training isn't right. I don't know. I'm not saying it is. It's just a maybe. I'm speculating. But maybe there's the onus gets put on the players at some point too. You know, Brian can't go out there and score goals.
Yeah.
And we were kind of taken aback with how Brian thought that it was a poor performance. I don't think that's how we saw the game, because there were a lot of moments, especially in that first half, where things looked really good to us, much better than they looked in other places. In other matches this season. So to me, I won't speak for you, but to me, that just shows that there is something there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of why can't we do it for 90 minutes? And is it a mental thing? Is it a fitness thing? Like they're just not physically capable of keeping that up for 90 minutes? I don't know, but like I said, it's hard to pinpoint. And I think that historically, when that happens, just the blame goes towards the coach because you can't. People start looking for what's going to change,
Right?
And you can't change a whole squad, but you could change a coach, and so I think that's where people's minds tend to go first. But I don't know if that's completely fair.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Brian's comments about it being a poor performance, and I do think a lot of it will center around like if now in the cold light of the next day, if you asked him why he thought it was so poor, I think he would probably center on the fact that they did have such like a low shot volume in the game, and you're right, and I think like I was also double checking John Morrissey's feed this morning at USL Tactics, just to sanity check myself on his like post match thread, and he also mentioned that like it was eye test again. It's like the midfield looked as cohesive as it's been. I think like the wingbacks and the midfield linked as best as they have probably the entire season. And it didn't lead to anything in terms of like a lot of opportunities. I know there's a couple of offside flags against Justin that may have been, like a one-on-one in a couple of different opportunities. So overall, I think you can't necessarily argue with like you have to shoot to win, and they didn't generate enough shots, and like the whole performance you can pick the bones out of and say like, well, it did seem more cohesive. It seemed like they were on the same page more. And again, they sort of have this performance where it's like 5 minutes of madness and a loss of 3 points.
Yeah, it's the fact that those 5 minutes happen to me is mental. But we've had this happen to Locomotive teams before, but usually we're used to seeing them being a little more resilient in coming back from that, and there's just none of that in this team. Even after the first one, after the equalizer, the 2-2 equalizer, right away, completely different team after that. And I don't know if it was the manner of the goal, because it was a fantastic goal.
Yeah.
Johnny Rodriguez's first goal at the 47th minute was just ridiculous. There's nothing anyone can do about that. Play him tighter, but it's not like he was on the edge of the box or anything. Sure. He was yards away from the box.
Yeah, pulled up like Steph Curry.
Like, from the logo.
I was going to say.
Yeah, so like to me, I not a player, obviously. I don't know how you react to that. To me, I would think that, it's not like anyone did anything wrong there. So just keep doing whatever you were doing for the last 46 minutes because it was great.
Sure.
But no, there was just a complete shutdown, just like we saw the week before in New Mexico as soon as that equalizer went in.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Did obviously like Yuma's post-match comments have kind of been making the rounds now on at least on Seriously Loco Twitter. I don't know about broader Loco's Twitter, because he is obviously like passionate guy, cares a lot, and his comments did kind of point to maybe some of the mental side of what was going on. I was picking out bits and pieces with it being in Spanish, but on the on Yuma's comments, like, what did you think about that? Obviously, he makes his first appearance of the season late in this one, which felt like a leadership change and less of a tactical change. But what did you make of his post-match comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has the right idea. I told you in the press box yesterday that I feel like the team just lacks true leadership. Just an experienced mind in there to keep things together when things get really rough. Like I said, I don't think anyone in the starting 11 is over 30. And that's not to say that they're inexperienced. I mean, some of these players have been in the league for 8 or 9 years, but it's not what we've had before. There's no Richie. Yuma is there, but he's not on the field like he usually was. There's no who else am I looking for here? No Eder, yeah.
I mean, even Lucho maybe to an extent.
Yeah. So I just think that this is still a team that is figuring out what to do when the chips are stacked against them, the cards are stacked against them. So I think that he's right, that Yuma's right, and I think that I know it's still early in the season, but probably not too early to start thinking about if there's mid-season reinforcements coming. I think that that's what needs to happen. We need someone with experience who's going to see significant minutes on the field.
Yeah.
I agree with him that it's a mental thing and that this cannot happen to the best clubs.
And interesting comments in there, because I think Joe asked the question of both Brian and Yuma of like, does this put some increased importance on the US Open Cup game on Tuesday? And they were both like, yeah, and it's not going to be easy because Omaha is not like a walkover, like, oh, if we just take it seriously, then we can beat them. And then we have Tampa. So it's like, between these next two games, I think the point maybe Yuma was making primarily is like, it doesn't get any easier. Like, it's not going to be any easier just because of just because we decide to win these next two games, basically.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a ton of games to be played. And, like we've seen in years before, there's no gimmies, in this league. So, yeah, I mean, the Open Cup match, if anything, it's just another really crazy obstacle, another mid-season game. It's not, it's not there for us to break out of a slump. It's going to be a challenge, and it's just unfortunate that this is where we're at right now in the season, that this is the form that we're in.
Yeah, in breaking down the match itself and talking about some of the big moments, obviously Locomotive get off to a pretty bright start, actually, and it felt pretty it just felt like they were on the front foot sort of from the beginning. And early on in this one, Amando Moreno gets a goal, admittedly scrappy in terms of it's a corner that's not cleared. It sort of sits there right outside of the 6-yard box for probably a longer period of time than you would want. And Moreno does well to kind of spin on the ball and fire a shot towards goal. It's deflected in. But Moreno, again, kind of at the heart of things. And after that performance in New Mexico, where he was the one generating a lot of the chances early on for Locomotive, and then obviously scoring the penalty, third goal of the season, he's by far, for a team that has really struggled to score, he's really the only one who has, like in any sort of consistent way. But we knew Moreno would be important. And these are the sorts of moments where it's like, how is he not getting into more situations, I guess, like that, or more shooting opportunities like this, where this essentially was the last time that we saw Moreno in a shooting area like the rest of the game.
Yeah, they just haven't been able to create for him the way that I think that he needs. And again, they did it as good as they've done all season yesterday, but it's just not enough. And I think he needs to play more too. I don't know. I know, I'm sure there's reasons. Beginning of the year was, fixture congestion, but, against Hartford, 74 minutes, against Monterey, 50 minutes, yesterday against Oakland, 63 minutes. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons, but every time he comes out is surprising to me, because when he's out there, he is our biggest threat.
Yeah.
And from a team that is desperately needing to continue scoring to stay competitive, because we're, the last two games, we always need a weapon there because you never know when we're going to go down.
Yeah.
So I think that he needs to be out there more, and I know, that I'm sure he wants to be too.
Sure.
But also I'm sure that Brian has his reasons for making those substitutions. But that's what I'm looking for is more of Moreno out there to just keep us competitive.
Yeah, and I mean, you make a good point, because really the only time that he stayed on the pitch for the whole 90 was New Mexico, and it was essentially because it was New Mexico. It almost feels like it was because it was against his former team.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you're onto something there, just in terms of, obviously with a guy like him, you want him available for as much of the season as possible, and it isn't as much of a short-term view, and 6 games in with no wins, like there is a short-term view here. Like there is a certain, like, we got to get some results. Locomotive like looked to kind of have control of this game, and I know, like, vibes wise, this podcast is probably like pretty depressing for Locomotive fans, but there is, I think we have to look for the lighthearted and the funny things about this game, because at the end of the day, soccer is a very, very silly game, and very silly things often happen, like when your former player Memo Diaz delivers in a free kick for a former player who never once took the field for your team, but was signed for your team, to flick home very improbably, but he makes contact. Niall Logue, ball flies into the far corner, and they equalize. A goal that you can only describe as like improbable in so many ways, but most because it happened at Southwest University Park between 2 former Locomotive players.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say about that one. It was just all too, like, serendipitous.
The stars align. The eclipse has nothing on Niall Logue scoring in El Paso.
Mercury's in Gatorade. I don't know. It was, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, if there were odds on that,
yeah,
they were incredible.
Yeah.
And anyone who placed anything on that bet is now a millionaire.
Yeah.
There's no universe where I would have predicted that to be correct. The right back to the center back.
Right. Memo, there's something about Memo where he just, like, ever since he left Locomotive, and I'm not saying that he wasn't good while he was here, because he certainly, like, had moments in his Locomotive career, but he was always sort of a depth option, and it was only when there were injuries and things that he saw significant playing time. And ever since he went to Oakland, I do feel like there is a bit of a chip on his shoulder when he plays in El Paso.
He loves a match against El Paso.
And
for sure.
It does help, I guess, that when a ton of your, like, family and friends can be in attendance, he basically bought out an entire section of the swap.
They announced when they were announcing the groups that were at the match, the Memo Diaz fan club. I could not believe my ears.
Yeah, that was funny. It's like Memo and White Sands Missile Range, like both a party at the game. So that, it's like one of those set piece goals happen. It's USL, like, and you're like, it is what it is. They didn't want to equalize, obviously, or they didn't want to give up an equalizer, obviously. But Locomotive, more or less, like, remain sort of in control of the game. And one of the things that we noticed during this time, before we get on to the penalty, one of the things that was quite clear from the press box view in particular was just how compact Roots' team was, in terms of, like, they weren't pressing particularly high up the field, but their defensive line was very high up the field. So the entire out of possession, Roots were essentially, like, the width of the center circle, or the length of the center circle, I guess. Like, they were maybe from the front to the back of the team, like, 15 yards.
5-5.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, it sort of was
0-5-5.
It sort of was, and a couple of times, like Locomotive really did find seams like to get through there. I know there was one pass in particular from Noah Dhillon where he kind of spotted that and played a good pass on the ground and cut a lot of the team out. And it was a nice intervention, I think, from Niall Logue actually to keep Moreno from running in behind off of a Dhillon flick. But that sort of thing in which we can see it, right? We can see like how compact their team is playing and the fact that there probably is space in behind, especially out wide. But those sort of runs like could help. And we didn't really do all that much to exploit it. Like a couple of times it looked like we might just get in behind, but we never truly exploited what Roots were doing defensively.
Yeah, and I think they were trying, but I think that there's still just a timing problem too. I think that there were a couple of offside calls from attempts to exploit them, like you're saying. So I think that they were just having bad luck with that yesterday.
The penalty, so Justin Dhillon taken down. It was a nice bit of play too, where it was actually Tony Alfaro getting down the left-hand side after some link-ups with Stauffer, and so Dhillon gets the ball at the top of the box. Pretty clear penalty. I don't think there were any like complaints in terms of the referee points straight to the spot, and it does look like his foot just gets swept out from under him. Justin like steps up to take the penalty, and for the listeners, I do just want to say that Christian, before the penalty was taken in the press box, he said he's just got to go right down the middle. Yeah. Just go right down the middle, which he then did, and got his first goal for Locomotive.
Like Blanchett just seems like a shifty guy who wants to make a move, so felt like he was going to jump for sure.
Yeah, and he did, and Dhillon dispatched the penalty pretty confidently, and it meant that Locomotive take a 2-1 lead into halftime, although they did give up a pretty big chance right before halftime where it looked like Roots might equalize. I think it was Alexeyev right in front of the Locomotive net, like sliding in. But taking that 2-1 lead into halftime, this is sort of like the crux of the issue, right? Before we get onto the Roots goals in particular, it is transforming 2 straight 2-1 leads into 2 straight 3-2 losses. Like, is that just that sheer fact like what is having sort of like the mental toll, in addition to like we talked about on-field leadership, but it's like 2 results in a row like that. I think it does seem like it's really affecting the mentality of the team now in the aftermath of them.
Yeah, how can it not? I mean, after the New Mexico game, that they go into practice the next week saying, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And we know that they're working to prevent that. Are we critical of what's happening on the field on Saturdays? Yes, but we're not ignorant to the fact that there are things that the team is trying to do to prevent that from happening. So that it happens again is deflating. I mean, you can compare it to anything in your personal life, things that we've all experienced things like that, where we're faced with a problem and we tell ourselves it's not going to happen again, and how can we prevent this from happening again? And we take all these steps, and then there it goes again. And when that happens, it's just really hard to pick yourselves back up. And Brian even said in the press conference too, like, this is a hard spot to get out of, and so they know that they're up against the wall, and it's just a matter of wanting to get out of it enough. Not that they don't want to, but to want to get out of it. You're trying. No one's saying that you're not trying, but what else can you do except try harder?
Right.
So yeah, I also would go back real quick to, we were talking about the build up to the Dhillon penalty, and
sure.
Brian also said that is exactly what this team is supposed to look like. All that build up with Tony,
right?
To get all that get the team forward and into those dangerous positions. So they do have an idea of what they want.
Yeah.
But why isn't it being done? And I think that's the question that they're all asking themselves this
For
week.
sure.
But I think it's important to note that there is a way that they want to play, because I know that some things that have been said are, who are these guys? What type of football do they want to play in? And that's what they want this year, and they got it and got something out of it. So fantastic. Build on that, please.
Right.
If you can take anything from this game, take that one moment and expand on it and turn it into 90 minutes worth of that.
Right. Yeah, you almost want them after this match to, not to say that they shouldn't analyze what went wrong, because of course you should, but they should almost focus on what went right in this game and how do we replicate that like over and over and over again, versus how do we avoid the bad, if you will.
And especially in this week, because two of the goal, the Logue goal and the Johnny Rodriguez open play goal are just freak accidents.
Yeah.
And so I'm less upset about this past week than the week before.
Sure.
Because the New Mexico goals that we conceded, I think, were just total switch offs. And this week, I think the problem was more of just being unable to get back into it.
Yeah.
I would take the 2 goals this week over the 2 goals in New Mexico any given Saturday.
Sure.
Because we had 40 more minutes to come back from it.
Right.
And that's the more frustrating part.
Right.
And that in 40 minutes of second half play, we did nothing.
Yeah.
We did nothing to get ourselves back in the match.
Yeah. The stats don't lie. Locomotive have 1 shot the entire second half, and it was on target. It was from Joaquin Rivas, and it was straight down
right down the middle into Blanchette's chest.
Yeah, like easy catch for Blanchette. That, like you said, like that is the difficult part to swallow about this game, is that there was plenty of time for the response. And it just never came. And if it had come in the way that, because many will know out there that I am a suffering Liverpool fan today, but the reality of that is, like, they can look at a bunch of chances that they should have taken, right? And while it was not a good overall performance, it's like, well, if they had put a couple chances away, you're talking about a very different game. This was like, there were no chances. Like, after going behind, there was the one chance, really, and it wasn't a case of like the finishing or like or Blanchette like really stood on his head or something. And that is like, that just has to be the minimum expectation, is that there's going to be like a fight. And there just really wasn't after going behind, which I think then does like speak to that on-field leadership and just who is picking the team up when that happens. And I think in this moment, like, there are probably a lot of people in the locker room who feel like what we saw last night in the press conference, and the challenge, like, for those guys, Brian obviously being the most prominent, but for all of them, is not necessarily like how does this keep happening? It's like, the challenge for them is to turn this around. Like, how do you like sort of stop feeling bad about it and start like working on actually pulling yourself out of it? Because anyone like could feel sorry for themselves in this situation. And there is a lot of luck around what happens for Roots in this. Like, Johnny Rodriguez first goal, we talked about it, absolute banger, like placed perfectly in a place where the only spot that Jamali can't save it, like at full stretch from like 35 yards, like just an absolute thunderbolt, 1 in a million. And then I think the penalty though is where that 5 minutes of madness sort of like conversation starts again, because the decision there from Jamali to come out and challenge for that ball with Johnny Rodriguez is just like, again, in the cold light of day, hindsight 2020, it's just not a good decision to come out. Rodriguez's touch on the ball is like, it flies out of the stadium practically. It's like, it's not good. And I can see why Jamali did what he did. And it is a penalty, unfortunately, which was then sort of the end of Locomotive's like challenge on the night.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, it's like you said, it's funny to watch after the fact, you know, because it was just such a strange decision. But like you said, in the moment, you know, desperate to make sure that they don't take the lead.
Right.
So Jamali's just trying to make sure that they don't get that shot. And, you know, any contact with the ball from Jamali and those go in favor of the keeper every
For
time.
sure.
But he just absolutely wipes him out.
Yeah. He kind of tabletops him like a chop block, I guess, or whatever. But no, it was an unfortunate moment for Jamali, who has like, I mean, I just want to be clear, been probably Locomotive's best player to start the season. And it's unfortunate that we spend multiple episodes in a row talking about how good the goalkeeping was.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one, unfortunately not Jamali's brightest night. And he does concede the penalty. Rodriguez slams it home. And, from there, like we talked about, it was sort of lights out for Locomotive. Like I said, they managed just the one shot and, in the second half. And you mentioned the Moreno sub. I think my thing is when Rivas was being readied, I'm thinking like, okay, yep, change of shape, like feels necessary. Get it, get into a front three where it's Justin and Amando and Joaquin and like see what they can do. Mm-hmm. And we take Moreno off, and I'm kind of like, well, that's not exactly what we're, because now we're sort of like making do.
And to me, you just lose all your pace.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It like I said, there's things going on that we don't know about, sure. But we don't know what they are. So we're just left asking why.
Yeah. There's a moment in the second half too, after Nick Hines came on, where Nick Hines, I think, is well known for being probably one of the fastest players on the team. And particularly with the ball. And I just found myself like when he got the ball, he would look for a pass. And I'm like, I just want him to run at somebody. Like just take somebody on. Like at this point, like what is there to lose?
Just push it down the line and make it a sprint.
Yeah, just try to get in a foot race with somebody. But yeah, I think there's those moments where everybody's sort of thinking, like almost overthinking and overplaying and trying to win the game like in every kick. And it's just not how it works, unfortunately. But yeah, so a disappointing result for Locomotive in what was a big opportunity, I think, given Roots' form coming into this one. And Locomotive's pretty poor home form, like just seems to continue. Obviously, they got the draw against Monterey, but between this season and last, the SWEP has not been the fortress that we had come to expect. So. In some ways. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say just one more thing, because I feel like we're about to wrap up on the match review, and
yeah.
It's just it was this thought was presented to me, and it's that the first 3 years of this club were fantastic, and so maybe we as fans were a little bit spoiled by that, and so season 4, when Mark Lowry's John Hutchinson comes in, maybe expectations were a little bit unrealistic for, like expansion clubs historically.
Sure.
You typically don't have the success that we had in our first 3 years. So Hutchinson comes in, that season is what that season is. Then you make another change, and so you're starting over again. And this is last year, Brian Clairhaut's first year. And again, new coach, not necessarily his players. And they do okay. In hindsight, again, they do okay with what they have. I mean, we made the playoffs. Did we do anything in the playoffs? No. But we made the playoffs.
Yeah.
But at this point, year 2 with the off season that we had, which by any account is top 3 in the USL.
Yeah.
To be at week 6 or 6 matches in, I should say, with 1 point, I think that the criticism or disappointment or, like disillusionment is I think it's fair at this point. And so as a fan, I think we just desperately need the team to give us something to hope for.
Yeah.
I think that in general, the fans that are more vocal are being much more forgiving and giving much more grace to Brian Clarehout than John Hutchinson was given.
Yeah.
And so I just hope that he sees that and that the team sees that and can do something with that. Don't abuse, it's not the right word, but just don't take it for granted, because I'm afraid another week or 2 like this and things are going to start getting really ugly.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. And I think, as far as the change now, or I guess like in terms of expectations, with this start to the season, it does feel like whatever the plan in terms of the system and all of those things, I do think like if you're going to experiment or try something different, like I don't think anyone is going to hold that against anybody right now. Like if Brian were to play a different shape or to like try personnel in different roles, I don't think like now is the time, because it's like I think there is a little bit of a feeling, at least from the people that I've spoken to, and particularly over the last day or so, like in terms of catching up with a lot of Locomotive supporters like in person, there is a feeling of like a little bit of stubbornness around like how the team is playing. And I think in general, there is an opportunity here to try something else. And I know we often like switch to that 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 like late in games. I think there might just be an opportunity here, especially in the Open Cup game, to try something else, and see if you get any better results. Plus, you maybe catch Dom off guard at Union Omaha, but no, I think you make a great point about the team do need to take advantage of the fact that there are still people who are giving grace and are and are being patient, and that's not going to last forever. Even with some of those who are more patient, maybe the impatient ones have already made themselves known, but yeah, the sentiment is sort of shifting. And it was a little bit interesting to hear. I couldn't tell at full time yesterday. There were boos in Southwest University Park. It was kind of tough to tell just exactly how they were directed, and like whether it was booing Roots, because they were really like celebrating kind of intensely on the pitch.
They always do.
They really
always do.
They give it the big one, as they say. So it really, I don't know if it was because of that, and El Pasoans obviously are like protective of the fact that like you're celebrating on their home ground, or if it was a booing of the performance. Like it certainly wasn't as like widespread as some of the booing we've heard in the past, directed at like an individual, but yeah, this it was noteworthy, I guess, that there were boos at full time. So yeah, hopefully the sentiment doesn't shift like further, and the team can give reason. Well, their first chance to start to win folks back over comes in just a couple of days. on Tuesday night in the Open Cup against Union Omaha at Union Omaha. And if anyone is thinking like, haven't I seen this movie before? You have.
Approximately 1 year ago.
Basically 1 year ago, when Locomotive played Union Omaha in the third round last year. And Omaha got a 2-0 win. Quite comfortable. And our own Mika Burrell was in attendance for that one. But yeah, this time around, a little bit of a changed Union Omaha side in that they've had a handful of players go elsewhere, and they have a couple of familiar faces to Locomotive fans now in their roster in the form of Josue Aron Gomez and Mishak Jerome.
Yeah, again, script writers are going crazy this season.
The narrative is out there, lurking always.
You can't make this stuff up. This is a Union Omaha team that is just in fantastic form. Even carrying over into last season. I mean, they have not lost in full time in 18 matches. They lost in the semifinal in penalties against Charlotte Independence last year. Again, just showing you how good of a team they were in their league semifinals.
And I think if I'm remembering that game correctly, I think they like absolutely battered Charlotte, who were sort of lucky to take it to penalties.
32 shots to 10.
Yeah, they absolutely. It should have been a blowout.
Yeah, no XG unfortunately, but I'm sure it was crazy. So yeah, I mean this team is not a slouch team by any means. Any other league, any other setup, federate, whatever you want to call it, and this is this team is in the top half of USL Championship. Finances probably the only reason that they play in League One.
Yeah,
because they pretty consistently perform very well, and then especially recently, in recent history.
Yeah, they took on one Knox SC this on Friday, which was only their second game of the USL League One season due to the Open Cup, I think. Mm-hmm. So they've played 2 Open Cup games and 2 League One games, whereas most of the League One has played 4 or 5 games already. So a little bit of a strange scheduling thing for Union Omaha, but they played one Knox, who is one of the form teams in League One. Like coming into that game, they had won 3 of their first 4, and they get beat by Omaha. Pretty disciplined performance, I guess, is how I would characterize it. And we know that Dom Casciato's approach is pretty pragmatic in terms of like he's going to first be solid and then attack. But the overall like vibe of this Omaha team is that they just find ways to win, and they can beat you a lot of different ways. It was I think what was it, a Dos Santos like screamer, or what was that? No,
their goal?
Yeah,
Duba.
Oh yeah, Duba. That's right. But yeah, so Duba gets the goal.
And there's a lot of championship talent on that team. It's crazy.
They're just a very...
They're sandbagging it.
They are a very good team. Like you said, the script writers are going crazy. I think we absolutely see Josue Aron Gomez in this one at least. I'm not prepared personally for Aron to score against Locomotive. I'm not mentally resilient enough for that right now.
I'm not. Yeah.
I have to consider the option because if I don't think about it beforehand, like
I'm watching this game in a padded cell on the first floor with no window.
Yeah, it's no, the Open Cup, obviously, I mean, the elephant in the room is that Locomotive have never won in the Open Cup.
0-4. Oh, yeah, 0-4 or 0-3?
0-3, I think.
Fuego.
Because I think it got canceled.
Omaha.
It got canceled 2 years, I think.
0-3.
So yeah. And none of them have been like particularly close or pretty. Obviously the Fuego match sticks out in the mind just because that was like an absolute drubbing. But even year one against Madison was at home, and they got absolutely, like, it was 3-0, like very comfortable win for Madison. So yeah, we've got just like one goal ever in the Open Cup in a 4-1 loss to Fuego. And the scorer of that goal, Josue Aron Gomez.
Was it?
I'm pretty sure.
Oh, now I want to look that up. I thought it was Calvillo.
I'm going to say it very confidently, but I'm pretty sure it was Gomez. In like garbage time. We were already like 4-0 down.
Yeah, I know it was not a goal that had any sort of bearing on the match. Yeah, it was Calvillo.
Oh, it was Calvillo.
Yeah.
Okay. My bad. Calvillo. My bad. 90th minute of a 4-1. Yeah. So yeah. Well, sorry, Eric, for trying to take a goal away from you. I think in general, obviously it's been in the past, there's been a lot of rotation around the Open Cup because of the natural fixture congestion. Anything midweek is tough to contend with. And there is maybe a sentiment in the Locomotive camp right now that there isn't going to be any rotation because
they
need to win, regardless of whether it's in the league or in the cup. This team needs to get a win on the board.
Yeah. So it's going to be a rough week.
Yeah.
And so like we said a couple times, it's going to buckle down, lock in, as they say.
Yeah. And like we said, it doesn't get any easier after the midweek game because it's Tampa Bay
away
at the weekend, away in Al Lang, and then Tulsa, who are in really good form the following week, back at home. So yeah, it is a tough stretch, but Locomotive, obviously the goal will be to get that first win on the board and hope to carry some momentum. I mean, in the presser yesterday, Brian referenced the Louisville win last year as sort of a springboard for that team. They went, from there they basically didn't lose for like 2.5 months.
Was it 17 matches? Something. Like
yeah, something. I think 12,
yeah.
and then it was a longer, unfortunately, winless streak. But
yeah.
But no, so hopefully they can use that to propel the season into gear and actually get going. But
so we're gonna have something positive to talk about on here,
right? It's just been doom and gloom all season.
And again, I like, no one understands more how rough things are going right now than the team does,
for sure.
But like you said, it's just a matter of, you can't feel sorry for yourself. You got to do something about it. So
yeah.
I'm rooting for them. Obviously, right. We're on their side here
for sure.
We want it really badly too.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that if it can be the first Open Cup win, it
would mean even more
club history. That would be fantastic, and who knows, a nice little cup run to ease the pain. That'd be nice. Get a matchup against one of the 8 MLS sides that's in it, so we can get the right to play Sacramento Republic in the in the Open Cup. But no, it's if we can do that, then who knows? In a couple of weeks, things change quite quickly in this league, as we know, and you can go from feeling great to horrible and back to great again. So hopefully by this time next week, we're talking about some better results. Maybe a shock win down in Tampa. Who knows? But well, anything that we're missing, Christian, aside from our how did you find the laser show last night?
No, I mean, I found it same way you did, in that I didn't. So, I don't know. Do we have to make predictions?
We should probably. I guess we should probably make predictions, huh?
1-0 win against Omaha and a 1-0 win against Tampa.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I'm not putting any money on those, but I just hope that they happen.
Yeah. I think I'm hoping that the team can channel what they've got going on right now into a win over Omaha. I'll go for a 2-1, and I'll just say that they find the way to stop the 3-2 part from happening this time. So they get that 2-1 lead, and then they hold it, and it's a good mental victory for the team. Tampa, I'll say we get a very creditable draw down in Tampa, but
yeah, draw. I mean, that's fair.
But I think a scoring draw probably would be, because I just look at that forward line and it just scares me. I know they haven't had the best start, which is the only like glimmer of sunshine. But on paper, that team is terrifying with Arteaga and Cal Jennings. So, well, cool. I think I guess that's it, or mostly it.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. And again, thank you to Austin for getting us the space to record today.
Yeah.
Amazing to have you here again, Phil, to do this with. So
yeah, no, it was the honor was all mine in terms of being able to come back and actually talk and sit in person and do it. And yeah, thanks again, Austin. And we'll I guess we'll be back in our normal format probably at some point. Either I don't know, if we beat Omaha, then we're probably going to record again.
Yeah, because who knows what'll happen against Tampa, and so we just got to make sure we do one after a positive result. Got
to squeeze any bit of joy out of this that we can, and then we'll be back with our typical match reviews. We'll have to see if we can pull off a watch along on Tuesday night. I'm not sure. But we'll because I'll be traveling back, but we will see.
Is it Tuesday or Wednesday?
Or maybe it is Wednesday.
I think it's Wednesday.
Maybe it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
I may have that wrong. Okay. So Wednesday. So we may be able to pull off a watch along then. And, like I said at the top of the episode, you can find us on all the major podcast platforms, Seriously Loco Soccer Pod. We're even on YouTube now. Our episodes are over there too. So wherever you're listening, you can find us. And until next time, guys, stay loco.